Cogito ergo sum. Je pense donc je suis. I think, therefore I am. So I have just finished reading a discourse on method by René Descartes, renowned philosopher known for bringing philosophy out of the Dark Ages, a time whereby everything was dominated by religion and less critical thinking. For any form of critical thinking could lead to your untimely death, because basically everything back then was seen as a form of sacrilege or blasphemy. Like, look at Galileo. Look what happened to him. Yeah, sad times, sad times. So I want to even appreciate this work for it bringing philosophers out of the dark and humanity as a whole to allow us to progress and to start to think. So I'm going to be reviewing this book, a discourse on method, or talking about it, having a discuss with you guys. I know this is not the normal type of videos I normally make on this channel, but this is a weekday. I normally upload on the weekends. This is a weekday. I want to explore a bit, so allow me do that. Our normal type of uploads will return in the weekend, so let me just enjoy this one for the weekday, and for the Monday it is. So it starts off with part 1. It only has about 6 chapters or 6 parts. Basically, René Descartes talking about the flawed nature of the school system in Europe, and he even realized that I have been going to the best schools in Europe and somehow I am still more confused than when I started. He realized that the subjects that are being taught, history, the language, the poetry, and mathematics, they are all good. They all teach you stuff, but they don't really give you knowledge. Rather, they make you bask in your ignorance to an extent. Because subjects like history and language, sure, they help you communicate, sure, they help you learn history, but they could just leave you deluded. History isn't really going to help you move forward. I guess that was what he was thinking when he said that. Then mathematics, he said that, okay, fine, yes, mathematics is like the most certain out of all of them, but I really felt mathematics as a whole was quite restricted. Then I even forgot to mention this part. It's called his theory on equality of reason. This part doesn't go without its flaws. Equality of reason, what he basically said that all human beings have the ability to reason, and reasoning is what makes us human beings. So people having the ability to reason makes all of us equal in the reasoning department. So he sees it not as like a meter from 0 to 100. He sees it as something like either or, where it is either 0 or 100. So either you're not able to reason, so you're not human, you're an animal, you're an inanimate object, you're a mechanical machine, or you can reason and you are human. So he says nobody is really smarter than another person, but the difference in opinions and just ways of functioning in society is based off how they apply their knowledge, they apply their reasoning into different areas. So he says that rather than thinking about being the smartest person, or rather than having all the knowledge, it depends on how you apply the knowledge. And I believe I have a few criticisms towards this, because he tends to think that somehow all human beings reason equally, and I'm like, human beings don't all reason equally. You cannot compare the state of reasoning between a baby to the state of reasoning between a PhD holder in astrophysics or something. It's not just on the same level, if you understand what I'm saying. And another criticism is he believes that the ability to reason is what makes us human beings, and I also want to disagree. On a biological level, on a physical level, babies aren't able to reason the way we reason, or aren't even able to reason, period. But are you saying babies aren't human beings? Or someone who's brain dead, or someone who's lost his cognitive ability to think, is that person not human? Sure, I want to also be light a bit in my criticisms due to the fact that this book came out around 1637, a different time, so reasoning was a bit harder and reasoning was quite different to do. So this type of technological advances that we have now weren't really there back when he made such claims and such assumptions. Okay, so concluding with part 1, he decides that since there's a lot of inconsistency in all these systems and the school systems, he wants to go on his own adventure to be less ignorant and understand everything around him and what's true and what's false. That's where we enter into part 2, where he makes a claim saying that systems with a single architect are better than systems with multiple architects. So he says systems with a single master are often better off with systems with multiple masters. Like a building done by a single architect has more structure than a building done by multiple architects, or a city ruled by one person is often better than a city ruled by multiple people. But then where it falters is where he says that science is like an amalgamation of multiple different opinions, and it's like there's less evidence of what is true and what isn't, because no one is really interested in what's true and everyone's just interested in sharing their own opinion. At least that's how science was back in the day. Well, I'm really grateful that we're in the present day where science has improved, and where it's less about your opinion and it's all about the fact and how provable what you're saying is. So I guess science wasn't like this back then, so he wanted to trust his own instincts more and he trusted in science because science was really, really backwards back then due to the whole nature of the time he was in. So I guess that's what led to his reasoning at that point. So for this adventure, he created a system for how he'll collect knowledge with the first rule of doubt. Never trust anything unless there is no way you can doubt whatever it is that you're examining. Rule of analysis: for their approach of solving a problem, always break it down into smaller bits and tackle them individually. Basically, like an algorithm called divide and conquer for those of you guys who do software engineering or computer science. Number three, rule of synthesis: start with a simpler problem or start with a simpler sub problem and work up as you go. You could get to solve more at a better time rather than starting with the hardest one and just failing on impact like that. But you get the point. You start small and then you tackle the problems, the small problems, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the last rule is rule of enumeration: document and review all your steps thoroughly. Make sure you didn't miss any of them. And I love this his method for research. It could sound a bit dated, but I mean this work is like what, more than 400 years old. That's who I really love the approach. I believe you could use it to approach your research. I really don't have any criticism of this point. So in chapter 3, there's even something funny. He mentions that this type of tactic or his way of approaching gaining knowledge can't be done by the average person or a very confident person or impatient person, that this takes years and time and effort and patience due to the fact that he lives in a time whereby any form of overdoing any form of overdoing, any form of overthinking, critical thinking, deep thinking, overanalyzing could be seen as sacrilege or witchcraft. Oh God, those times were so backwards. I really can't imagine living in those times as of right now. But yes, so he had to tackle them seriously. So he came up with rules in part 3. He came up with moral rules that he used to take on his knowledge-seeking adventure. That way he won't get himself killed. So the first rule is conform to the laws of wherever he is. He has to strictly obey the rules of wherever he is. But then he also mentioned that he doesn't really want to obey the extreme laws just in case they might be wrong and he won't get himself hanged. So rather than staying on the extremes, it's better he stays in the middle where even though it's wrong or even though something happens, he could still survive and he could still be balanced. Number 2, be firm in your current beliefs and actions. So he says be strong in your beliefs, don't be swayed by any little thing. It's better to remain in one line, in a straight line, and walk in a straight direction, especially if you use an analogy of if you're lost in the forest. It's better to walk in a straight line than walking in multiple different paths and getting lost, or not even walking at all. And lastly, he said, master yourself. Don't try to change the world. He said that for the most part, the world is really out of our control, and not everybody should go and become a revolutionary or try and change anything that doesn't really need to be changed. Rather, what you can really control for the most part is your thoughts. So you should improve the quality of your thoughts and you should improve the quality of yourself as a person rather than going out of your way to try and change the world. That is not your responsibility. You are just human. You are no God. So that's it for part 3. This is basically a rule book that he sets for himself in this chapter as he goes on these adventures. I also need to tell you that lots of time passes. This isn't just something that he wrote at the end of his research. This is something that he's documenting step by step as he goes. So I believe like by part 3, 9 years have passed in this whole venture, which is fun. If you're enjoying this video and you want to help me make more videos like this, be sure to subscribe. Okay. Now we've entered part 4. This is where he makes his grand conclusion. And this is where he makes his grand principle that he walks off of for the rest of his philosophical journey. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. He came to this conclusion due to 3 main factors. The first one being that you can't really trust your senses. A straight stick will look bent inside water. Your sense of smell can be manipulated. You could smell a cherry when it could be an apple. In this type of situations, you can't always trust your senses. Sometimes red might look like orange depending on the lighting. Those type of examples are like why you can't really trust your senses, your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your sense of hearing, all those type of things. To an extent, science has its way of being wrong. For example, Gauss's atomic theory saying that atoms are indivisible. When that was proven to be wrong later on, atoms are divisible into the protons, neutrons, and electrons with a nucleus in the middle. According to him, simple things like geometry people can mistake. Bro just called geometry simple. Huh? For the most part, when I did geometry in university, it wasn't anything too hard. But then it's really easy to make mistakes, especially if you miss any fundamental steps. And lastly, he said dreams and reality. Yeah, this one really caught me. I wrote an essay about dreams recently on my Instagram. Post the essay and you can pause to read it right now. So you can do that. So I basically spoke about how dreams feel so real, and then when you wake up, reality in itself might be disappointing. And he says that it's really hard to tell that you're in a dream, even though the dream itself might have its unrealistic tendencies, but your brain it manipulates you to think that you're in a dream. So now that I'm awake, now that I'm here making this video, how am I not sure I'm in a dream? Just waiting to be woken up. You remember in chapter 2, he mentioned his principle, his rule of doubt. Basically, doubt something until you can't doubt it anymore. Derived these 3 things that he was doubting so strongly, and he came to this conclusion that the fact that he doubts, doubt in itself is a sign that he is real, is a sign that his brain is working, doubt itself that he can think, and that thinking is proof enough to the fact that he exists. Though I do have my criticisms to this point, because you're saying that you doubt your senses and you doubt logic, reasoning, science, and all of that. Okay, but if you're going to doubt them, what now makes you think that you thinking as a result of your senses, as a result of your brain, as a result of logic and your reasoning isn't an illusion too, isn't also wrong? What to make you think that your doubt is something so real? I mean, you just mentioned you can't tell the difference between a dream and reality, or if they are the same or so different. So what makes you think that your thinking is real? Exactly what I'm trying to do without going here or there is that he says that he thinks, and that in itself is enough proof that he's real. But I'm saying that in itself might be your senses also coming to manipulate you, also being wrong. You may not be thinking. You may be deluded to think that you are thinking, but you may not be thinking. Maybe that's just him trying to grasp onto that assumption, because there's really no basis of the claim that he's sure of what he thinks about, or he's sure to the fact that he thinks. That in itself is his own assumption, and that assumption is what he used to derive this whole I think therefore I am. In essence, how could he be so sure he's thinking if he doesn't trust any other things in his senses or in logic or in science? I think I've made my point clear now. After that, he uses that, the fact that he thinks as a being, to justify the existence of a perfect being, ergo God. He says that as an imperfect being, what you mainly grasp onto is your ability to think. So he says, since you can think of the idea of a perfect being. But then the idea of a perfect being can't come from an imperfect being. It has to come from a perfect being. So therefore, that idea you have of God came from God. So that proves that God exists. That's some mad genius right there.
Stop the cap.
Okay. Sarcasm aside, that clearly has its room for criticism, because it's clearly wrong. It comes off as secular. You're proving God through God. So that in itself is wrong. You can't prove the existence of God through God. And also, you as an imperfect being who can't trust anything or any form of your reasoning or any form of your senses, what make you think that your idea of a perfect being, you as someone like that, what make you think that your idea of a perfect being would be correct? He's also alluded to the fact that subjectivity in itself is what makes him so confused. Your own subjective opinion on what a perfect being is can't be the true idea of what a perfect being is, or the true idea of what God is. It's merely just his own, the abstractions that come from his own ideals of what perfect is. So him using that to prove God isn't really correct. To me, that's my main criticism for his whole cogito ergo sum, and using that to prove the existence of a perfect being. Let us get into part 5. Part 5 starts off with his new world from chaos thought experiment. So imagine this. You are a perfect being. You are God, and you decide to create the whole universe and create a blob, and you put certain rules to the blob and to the nature of the blob. So the blob is green, and you create another world around it, and you allow it to move or venture through that world with the cognition that it's doing what it wants. He said that is he basically tries to use that as an editor. Though if you're here, I just want to state that he used that analogy or assumption to help with his mechanical philosophy. Now he is next, chapter 5, where he talks about the human body as a whole being mechanical. Basically, the only thing that makes us human beings or living things comes down to our brains. He even explained the circulatory system. So basically, our bodies are made in systems that basically executes in like a form of programming. So how we walk, how we move, how we talk, how we respire, how blood circulates about our body, digestion, all of that, if you analyze it well, seems like, I want to say, deterministic or mathematical, whereas like it's just a bunch of systems. So this goes through this process and that process to get you this. It's always like that. But he says the only distinction is our brain, and that is what makes us not machines and what makes us real, I guess. But then again, he doesn't really do a good job at explaining why our brains are like a consciousness separate from our the rest of our body. So that's my main critique of that. He tries to say that okay, our brains are special and they are what makes us human beings or what makes us not machines, but he doesn't do a good job at explaining why it's like that. Then he even goes ahead to say that animals are just very, very advanced machines because animals aren't able to use their language to communicate properly, and they aren't also able to reason beyond their, I guess, natural wiring. Well, clearly that was before Charles
Love that.
Darwin's principle of natural selection came out, or yeah, when the rule came out, because this is so backwards. What do you mean animals are advanced automata and they can't adapt or reason to solve problems? I mean, in the present day, we have rats that they do tests on to see how they navigate new environments. We have ecology, the study of animal behavior. I've forgotten what that concept is called. Each other, like bees communicate with each other, even though it's not a language that seems as formal as our own. They still use it to communicate within each other and how they want to solve problems. You see, bees solve problems, ants solve problems. Even though ants don't look like they are talking, they are clearly communicating with each other, and that's why there's a level of orderliness that's present in those ants. Part 6. Part 6 is where he talks about why he's been scared of publishing lots of work, and then he only published this one. I'll tell you the real reason. He didn't really say the person that made him not do this, but it's clear that it was Galileo. Galileo got tried for bringing out his principles on the cosmology and the nature of the world. Because, like I said, Dark Ages. Hey, yeah, editor Doifi here again. I just want to state that what Galileo did discover was his principle on how the Earth revolves around the Sun, which wasn't what was believed before. I believe the Catholic Church, which had lots of influence over the world at that time, believed that the earth was the center of the universe because of Aristotelian doctrines and biblical doctrines. And I also want to say that this wasn't actually the Dark Ages. I don't know why I said that multiple times, but this wasn't the Dark Ages. This was the beginning of the new scientific renaissance, as I want to say it, during the mid to late 1600s. That's the 17th century. Yeah, I really appreciate René Descartes for his contributions to philosophy, and I hope you appreciate this video and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, like and subscribe. Let me know if you want more book reviews slash philosophy videos like this, talking about philosophy, criticizing stuff. I would love to do more stuff like this. This was fun writing all of this down, taking notes of all of this. Yeah, it was fun. I would love to do more of this. I would love to do more of this, but don't worry, regular videos will come back this weekend. I just wanted to record this and make this because why not? So if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.